Well, good morning and welcome to Zen Live. So, yesterday I've been kind of like fixed on Bill O'Reilly and Fox News last night at Martini Live. And basically the idea that I was playing with was that Fox News as a big tent and Bill O'Reilly as the tent pole is a way, because it's still on, of I just had the thought that before cable came, we had three networks. It was a trinity, ABC, NBC, and CBS, and each had an anchor. But they were all variations of the same one. They were different flavors. Kind of like the Trinity in religion. I mean, the Holy Ghost, Son, and the Father, they were three separate, but they were still one. So you had the three anchors, and since TV was born in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, that's 30 years of having an anchor, a Trinity. You could come home from work and tune in and you would get anchored. You felt secure. Walter Cronkite was steady. In other words, and the Huntley Brinkley offered a little irony and an ironic twist. But the point was, it was a national anchor. And then came cable news, and the Trinity got fragmented. And then you had 24-hour news, 24/7 news, not just half hour at night, but all day long. And then the evolution continued, but the effect of it was a fragmentation. The effect of it was, well, I'm going to use this little Buddha snow globe here. It's kind of like a metaphor. And before cable news, America was kind of like this, clear. I mean, you were kind of like stabilized by these anchors. That's why they're called an anchor. An anchor holds you in a flood. It keeps you from being swept away. Then came cable news. And then everything was fragmented. And news talk increased because you had to fill it in. Every hour was a news program. So you had to have exciting, entertaining news. And Fox News came in and kind of like provided a anchor in the cable news. So if you felt like you were in a flux and you needed a strong center that you could depend upon, Fox gave you that. And then Bill O'Reilly was kind of like the Pope. And then religion, televangelism created these big mega media churches, and they kind of like combined with Fox. So you had a secular and a religious viewpoint that became one. But anyway, that's where we were yesterday. So I wanted to pick that up. But picking up this, I picked this up. I remember 2 or 3 years ago, I had this urge to get a Buddha snow globe because it's such a great metaphor for the mind. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about this finding the center. Now, I talk a lot about the center, but what that means basically is clarity. You see how clear that is? When you have clarity, you are in your center. When your mind looks like that, you don't have clarity. You don't know which snowflake is real, or are they all real, or are they all illusion? And you can't find your way because you're in a snowstorm. So the mind breaks up into little thoughts, thinking, and the biggest thought of all is me. Am I outside of the mind looking at snowflakes? Or am I inside my own mind as a snowflake looking at other snowflakes? No wonder I'm confused. So this whole idea of finding your center to stabilize the snow mind, right, is kind of like, this is a metaphor for what I mean. We have to find clarity or we go crazy. The psychosis is loss of center. So you're just in a snowstorm and there's no anchor. So we have to find this anchor, which I call me. That's my center. So I have to find this me when the mind is destabilized. I really have to. So I find my center in external things: a good friend, a parent. For the child, the parent is the stabilizing center. A religion, a teacher, or a thing. The beach, or a mountain cabin, or my home, or my room, or my bed, or my garden. So we find our center in these places, or I can find my center in some activity. When I went down to the beach at Hatteras, my host there, they have this big puzzle, and doing a crossword puzzle centers you. Reading a mystery novel. We like our TV shows because the ones we like kind of like center us. So we have our knitting, or sports, or hunting. Hunting is a great centering. You work in the snow globe all week, but when you're hunting, you're centered. You work in the snow globe all week, but when you have sex, you're centered. So we have all of these ways of calming the snow globe, you see. But unfortunately, they're all temporary because we can't stay with them. So then we find when we realize that our snow globe, we realize that our mind is a snow globe, and that I can center it. That an external center, or what we might call a false idol, is not going to work because somebody can take it away, or I can't get to it, or I can't stay there. I can't stay on vacation. Go to a monastery or a spiritual retreat, get centered, the snow globe stops, and then we go back into the world and the snow globe is back, you see. So then we want to get back. We have a spiritual experience that centers us, and now we want it, but then we go back in the world and the snowstorm comes and we want to get back to that experience or recreate the experience. So the problem with the external, whether that external is a thing or a belief in the mind, it's temporary, it's impermanent, and it's in time. So I have to get to it or restore it. That's what Trump was talking about. Restore America, restore the center, restore clarity. More snow. When we see that my effort to clear the mind, my disciplines, all the things that I'm doing to calm the mind, are basically shaking the mind, something shifts, and we begin to, there's a turnaround. So instead of making effort to calm the mind and find my center, we let go. We begin to discover that letting go of the effort to calm the mind calms the mind. So it's a reversal in direction. Instead of going towards the future where I'll be calm, we realize through experience that the calm mind is already here. So I have to let go of the effort to calm the mind in order to calm the mind and restore clarity. See, the center up, or center is that we're trying to get to, is going to elude us as long as we blame either ourselves or somebody else for our not experiencing it. So this whole, I was thinking about, the ways we look for a center. We look for our center in a person. It could be a teacher, a guru. It could be a family member. Could be a good friend who stabilizes us. Or it could be a belief. A belief stabilizes us. A belief is in a thing. In that we believe that thing is real. And so that is kind of like a mental anchor, you see. But it's always under attack because other people have different beliefs that they say is the truth. So if my belief is the truth and your belief is the truth, well, now we got two truths. And there can only be one truth, so I got to get rid of that belief if it's trying to make me doubt my belief. And addiction, that can be a sinner. I remember when I used to smoke. That's an addiction, and I could imagine giving up everything except cigarettes. So if the house burned down, if I lost everything, if I had a pack of cigarettes, it was okay. But so that's kind of like that. The addiction actually centers the mind. The addiction kind of like stabilizes the mind because that's as long as that's there, I am fixed on it. The addiction fixes me. A group fix. So all of these centers that we seek kind of like fix us. You see, when the snow globe is going, I'm not fixed. I'm not stable. We have a lot of friends. Everybody has friends who need fixing. I mean, they're not stable. They're just blah, blah, blah. This emotional. Everything is a crisis. Everything is an oh my God. Everything is, and we say, calm down. Be clear. Let's calm down, settle down. So this whole, we see this everywhere, but I'm just putting it in the context of a snow globe. That's a metaphor. So the Buddhist snow globe is a metaphor for the turbulent, fragmented mind. And the clarity is the mind that is clear. And when the mind is clear, there's no boundaries. You think of that? See, if this is clear, you can't, there's a boundary here, there's glass, but you can't see it. Clarity means horizon to horizon, no boundaries. When we feel unfixed, when we feel fragmented and in a snowstorm, it closes in. If you're in a snowstorm, you can just see 2 or 3 feet. Called a whiteout, you can just see you're bound. That's a boundary. I can only see 3 feet or 10 feet or whatever what the snowstorm allows, but there's a boundary there. When the snow stops, I can see forever. There's no fixed center. There's no fixed boundary, you see. So when we have a center that fixes us, like a belief, if a belief fixes us, there's a boundary to the belief. And on the other side of the boundary is somebody else's belief. So there's this feeling, anything that we use to fix ourselves and stop the snowstorm creates a boundary. If we join a group that really seems to be settled and clear, and they have conviction and they know what the truth is, so we join the group. So while we're in the group, we feel centered and certain and fixed, but then that group has a boundary. Now there are people who are outside the group, and then somebody in the group begins to doubt the group, so you kick them out. Or somebody outside wants to come in and you check them. Are you okay? And you search them, make sure they don't have any doubts. You see? So there again, that has a boundary. So all of these all these false idols or false centers have boundaries. You see, so they fix us. Then I have a boundary. Now I feel that I don't. I'm still lacking the clarity, because I know what clarity is. So we all know what it is. It means no boundaries. That's why we like to go to the mountains and climb the top of the mountain. No boundaries. I can see horizon to horizon, you see. And people like to go to sea because there's no boundaries. And the idea of clarity of mind is a mind that is not contained. So where is the unfixed mind? Well, it's right here. This is it. See, so all of these, so I thought I'd add too, these spiritual disciplines people do, meditation, yoga, study of spiritual teachings, service. Service is a spiritual discipline. All these spiritual disciplines basically have the goal of bringing clarity and bringing you to fixing you in the present moment, so that you're just here in your body, or you're just sitting in meditation. And when you sit in meditation, it's kind of like you just sit so the mind settles. Just sitting settles the mind. So we find all these spiritual disciplines are mind-settling practices, but what makes them, if they're done right, and what makes them work is that you may begin with the idea that this discipline will give me clarity, but if you follow these disciplines to the end, you'll discover that there is no they're not going to give you anything, in the sense that there is no center to gain, and you just do it because this is what you do. And when you begin to do a spiritual discipline like meditation or yoga or study of scriptures or spiritual teachings, because it's just what you do, and it's not because you're going to get anything from it. You're not going to be enhanced with its knowledge. You're not going to become an important person, or you're not going to have a big belief that everybody wants, or you're not going to make people are not going to flock to you and make you an authority. All of these things are craving the center, desiring your center. If you reach the point where that drops off, and your spiritual, it no longer becomes a discipline. It just becomes kind of like an empty hole. It kind of like becomes the emptiness that has no gaining thought in it. It becomes a place where your mind settles, and this spills into your whole life, you see. So when you stop putting a need on your spiritual practice, and you just do it because you do it, it begins to spill into your whole life, and your whole life becomes clear. It becomes like a hot penny on a field of ice. If you keep that penny hot, it would melt that whole iceberg. If you put a hot penny on an iceberg, it would melt the iceberg if you could keep that penny hot. You see, so your spiritual discipline, your spiritual practice is a kind of like a vow. You say, I realize that my mind is a snowstorm, and I'm just going to sit here until it calms down. I'm just going to stop making effort. I'm going to stop making effort to calm the mind. And effort to calm the mind basically is a desire to calm the mind. So if I stop desiring to calm the mind, and I just make the vow to sit for 20 minutes in the morning or do my yoga or study a scripture as something I do, then the effort to clear the mind begins to fall away too. And you begin to see that it's my desire to be clear that is creating this snowstorm. And so this is a gradual process of just letting the mind's natural state restore itself when we stop stirring it up, trying to make it clear with our hand. So it's really, this is a revelation. And this is Zen, basically. When you see that every effort to make the snowflakes stop makes the snowflakes float. And seeing that, you just sit. And as you sit, you become clear. As you sit, you look around, and you see there are no boundaries. And if there are no boundaries, there are no problems. Oh, there are problems come up, but you see through them. Nothing. You never feel contracted back into a tight little container. The world is always clear and infinite, and you can see from horizon to horizon. And if a snowflake comes, you say, oh, there's a snowflake. Isn't that interesting? And it settles. So you're constantly settling as the world tries to stir you up. You're constantly sitting. You're constantly in repose, even though you're busy doing things. Even though you're catching a bus in a stressful situation, I got to get there in time. Even there, you're still in repose, and your mind is clear. So let's end there, and I'll see you this evening at Martini time.